Oh boy, it's another one of these. Just like with season 4, I watched these with Ducko and Jamf. But Ribbit Theater joined us as well right as we had finished watching his favorite episode. This is so sad. Anyway, you probably know the drill by now. The episodes are ranked from least favorite to favorite, not worst to best. And if you don't know the drill by now, why did you pick season 3 as your first one of these to watch? That's a bit cringe, bro.
Oh my god, I'm glowing! Why am I glowing?
Mewtwo vs Shadow is my least favorite episode of the entire show. Apparently this was made out of spite as one of the animators left the show on bad terms. And by god is it obvious. It's so fucking slow and boring. There are actually no standout moments in this entire episode except for the admittedly somewhat funny death and the absolute meme of a line that came before. Taka was apparently given direction to purposely voice act worse as Shadow, which is so fucking stupid since he actually did really well with his first portrayal back in season 1. I get that it's a reference to the bad Sonic voice acting, but if you're going to take the piss out of one character, you've got to do it to both, otherwise it comes across as disrespectful to the character you're mocking. And on a show like Death Battle, that's really not the idea you want to get across, especially when you have that character lose. It feels like this entire episode was intentionally made lackluster by everyone involved in the fight scene, which they thankfully haven't done anything like since then. Cammy vs Sonya has aged so fucking badly, holy shit. The animation is all really awkward and the use of PNGs is really bad. The fight lacks any standout moments and the Sonya sprites are genuinely hard to look at. This was apparently Louis' first episode of the show. I love almost all of his animations, but he unfortunately did not make a good first impression with this. I may dislike Mewtwo vs Shadow more on a personal level, but I wholeheartedly believe this episode is the worst of the season. At least Dronia is cool.
Hey! Have you seen a turtle penis?
Several, actually.
Bowser vs Ganon is really fucking boring. The tennis segment was enjoyable and the death was interesting at least, but the fight was really slow. The sprites didn't mesh well together and the pacing of the fight was awful. Oh dear, not a good follow-up to a season premiere of this caliber.
Spinning time.
Flash vs Quicksilver isn't great. I like the idea of the fight being a race taking place in under a second. It's a really cool concept. The animation left a lot to be desired though. A lot of it felt really static and awkward. The voice acting wasn't great and the fight didn't sell me on the speed of either character. But thankfully a lot of fights in later seasons fixed that last issue. But even if most of the fight didn't impress me much, I did like the scene inside the Speed Force a lot. Not bad by any means, but I'm just not that into it.
Boomstick, I think the loser is us.
I like Deadpool vs Pinkie Pie, but I've come around to agreeing that it's the weakest season finale over Thanos vs Darkseid. The episode is really fun and well animated, but a gag fight with a cop-out ending is not a good way to close out the season, especially when the last 2 episodes could have made for perfect finales. But oh well, at least the fight is enjoyable and there are some creative uses of fourth wall breaking. And Taka gets another go at voice acting so that he gets a chance to actually do well this season. Not a bad episode, but it is a bad season finale.
Come on, Sonic's the strongest fictional character of all time.
Amy vs Ramona starts off really good but falls off a bit after they enter the dimension inside the bag. From there, the animation gets a lot more awkward and confusing. There are a good few shots where Ramona just stands staring into space. But the death is still alright. I really love the music choice and the first half of the fight is still very fun to watch.
How about a little more PG and a lot less 13?
We live in a society. Savor all the little emotions. Dark Knight reference, Dark Knight reference.
Okay, that's funny. I like the model, but not really my color.
Gangweed. Karen took the kids. Society moment, society moment. Okay, but unironically the fight is enjoyable and the death was really fucking good.
Are you okay?
I really like Ken vs Terry. It doesn't do anything particularly amazingly, but it's a really fun and fast-paced fight. Sprites matched up well. Music choice was good and I like the death. Easily one of the better sprite fights of the season.
Not this time, Yankee!
Tracer vs Scout is really fun. It was my most wanted episode at the time of it being announced and I adored it when it first came out. I don't love it nearly as much anymore, but I still really like it. Scout isn't represented well at all, but the fight is still enjoyable, and both voice actors did really well in their roles. I really like the track as well. The analysis is still notably really awful though, I won't deny that.
Any more weapons you want to throw at me?
I liked Ratchet and Clank vs Jack and Daxter way more than I remembered. The entire fight was really fun. Both Fortnite duos got to show off a wide variety of weapons and they all had some good lines in the fight. The climax of the fight was also really chaotic and fun and I loved it a lot. The music that played during it added to it a lot as well. The other song that played during the rest of the fight was really good too. So good in fact, that they absolutely had to use it again for Ken vs Terry. This isn't one of my all-time favorites, but I love this episode a lot.
Don't start crying, woman.
Zorro vs Ursa is easily my favorite sprite fight of the season. The sprite work on Ursa's various armors is really well done. The choreography and voice acting are great and I love the ending shot. I can't believe Zorro cut Ursa's frontal lobe in half. 1987. Dante vs Bayonetta is my favorite season premiere by a country mile. The wide variety of weapons and abilities made it so there was never a dull moment in the fight, and the inclusion of both characters' partners wasn't a necessary addition, but made the episode more entertaining. You can clearly tell this was a passion project by Torian and he did a phenomenal job. Too bad the season didn't get much better than this.
Okay, spiky beard!
Hulk vs Doomsday is so fantastic. Easily one of the best Marvel vs DC fights in the show's history. Just seeing these two behemoths with their ripped physiques punch each other and destroy their surroundings is really fucking cool. The track they used for the fight is phenomenal and this has one of my favorite climaxes of any episode, as well as my all-time favorite death in the show's history. This episode was an absolute joy to revisit and I don't see myself getting tired of it anytime soon. It's in my top 10 favorite episodes of all time for sure. I'll acknowledge that Mehta vs Carolina isn't the best episode of the season, but it's had more of a lasting impact on me than any other episode of the season since it introduced me to Red vs Blue, which quickly became one of my favorite shows. I love the analysis segments since the cutaway gags make it one of the more unique episodes in that aspect. The interactions between the hosts are good. The animation is fantastic. I adore the custom track they used. The death is good. It just all comes together to make something I absolutely adore. It's hard to make same series fights work for me, but this episode absolutely soars despite that hindrance. It's one of my top 3 favorite episodes of all time and Death Battle hasn't made an episode since then that I preferred. And that wraps up the season 3 ranking. Thanks again to Ducko, Jav and Ribbit for going through these with me. I definitely had a better time watching it than I would have if I hadn't brought up every character getting hit in the frontal lobe as we watched through the episodes. I don't think it's a controversial opinion to say this is my least favorite season to date, even being beaten out by season 1. The top 5 episodes were all really great and the top 3 below that were all pretty good as well. There wasn't a single 3D fight that I didn't like and the high points of this season are my personal favorites of any season I've gone over so far. But almost half of the season ranges from mediocre to awful and that's pretty disappointing. It even has my 2 least favorite episodes of the show almost back to back. There was even a point in the middle of the season where I was considering dropping the show while the season was still ongoing. But still, the good does outweigh the bad for me. The season overall is still alright. The top 5 episodes on this list really save it from me calling it a bad season overall. I hope this stays as the worst season for as long as the show runs, because it'd be a shame if they stopped their streak of each season improving on the one before it. Season 3 is the only one to be worse than the season that preceded it, but at least it gave me my 3rd favorite episode of the whole show. And on that note, I'll cover said season that preceded it, as well as the 2 episodes I prefer over Mehta vs Carolina next time.